Dr. Elias Chen had never believed in signs. Patterns, yes. Signals, of course. But not signs, those were for people who needed meaning in chaos. He, however, was a man of reason, a lead astrophysicist at SETI's Pacific Deep Listening Array off the coast of Hawaii. He spent his nights staring into deep sky data, looking for anything that deviated from the galactic background noise. On a chilled, windless Tuesday at 3:14 a.m., something did. A frequency unlike anything they'd ever recorded, a pulse emerging from the Hydra constellation, flashed across all three primary antennae. Duration, exactly 3 minutes and 14 seconds. Binary coded. Rhythmic. Not natural. Elias leaned forward, pushing his glasses up as the signal repeated for a second time. He knew cosmic flukes didn't repeat. This wasn't static. This wasn't a pulsar. This wasn't noise. He activated Protocol Sigma Red. Within minutes, encrypted data packets were uploaded to SETI's central processing node in Geneva. Within hours, his lab was silenced. His access revoked. All communications rerouted. The message from the global command was chilling in its brevity. Containment initiated. Do not disclose. Await further instructions. But something about the frequency had embedded itself in Elias' subconscious. That night, he dreamed of a black ocean with stars pulsing beneath the surface like heartbeats. He woke up drenched in sweat, hearing the frequency's rhythmic echo in his head. What made it worse? He wasn't the only one. Across the globe, isolated SETI teams began experiencing similar auditory hallucinations, insomnia, paranoia. Some claimed they'd seen patterns in the data that mapped something. Not just a signal, but a structure. A design. A message. When a colleague in Norway went missing, last seen mumbling the numbers 7H41 over and over, Elias knew this was no longer a scientific anomaly. This was psychological warfare. And the war was only just beginning. He reviewed the logs. The original waveform contained something that hadn't been there before, a shadow signal, slightly out of phase. A second layer. His fingers trembled slightly as he filtered the wave. The binary resolved into a grid. Not letters. Coordinates. The location pointed to a desert region in Inner Mongolia. A cold, lifeless plateau. But not lifeless anymore. The coordinates matched an old Soviet listening post, decommissioned after the Cold War. But 2 years ago, Chinese satellites recorded heat signatures in the region, brief, sporadic, then gone. Elias dug further. SETI had flagged the region once, 12 years ago. Another signal, weaker, dismissed as natural radiation. But now, as he superimposed the two frequencies, something clicked. They aligned. He stared at the screen. Someone, or something, was using Earth's forgotten machines. At dawn, Elias broke protocol. He called his old mentor, Dr. Miriam Okafor, now working in cognitive AI. He didn't use encryption. He didn't care. They're trying to map us, Miriam. Not contact. Catalog. There was silence on the other end. Then, get on a plane. Now. Before they come for you. He shut the laptop. Outside, the ocean no longer felt vast, it felt like a wall. And he was trapped inside it. Later that day, a black car appeared near the observatory gate. 2 men stepped out, neither wearing insignias. One asked for Elias by name. The other never spoke. Their presence radiated authority, but not the kind bound by law. Elias was gone before they made it to the control room. He took a back road out, his old Jeep bouncing over volcanic rock. He didn't have a plan, just coordinates, and fear. As he crossed the island's northern ridge, the sky turned crimson with early sunset. His thoughts spiraled. Who else knew? And why had Geneva silenced the lab? By midnight, Elias reached the airport in Hilo. No ticket. No luggage. Just a burner phone and a drive full of corrupted data. The woman at the counter didn't ask questions. The name on his fake ID said Daniel Wu. 30 hours later, he stood in a Beijing train station, disheveled, exhausted, clutching a folded paper with a handwritten set of coordinates. He couldn't shake the dream of the pulsing stars. In each reflection, train windows, puddles, polished floors, he swore he saw them blink. The train slid across the Mongolian plateau like a slow scalpel across frozen flesh. Frost coated the windows, and Elias Chen sat perfectly still, breath fogging the glass as the scenery blurred into an endless sea of pale dunes and jagged black rock. At 3:14 a.m., the same time the Hydra frequency first struck, he saw it. A jagged silhouette rose in the distance. A circular satellite dish, half buried in snow, pointed at a sky long since forgotten. Rust flaked from its ribs. The surrounding fence was collapsed in places, yet something about the station still pulsed with purpose. He stepped off the train alone at a nameless stop. The station had no name on the map. No lights. No staff. Only a path of black gravel leading toward the foothills. A thin man in a black coat awaited him. "You're late," the man said in Mandarin, his accent vaguely European. "I wasn't aware I was expecting." The man didn't smile. "Everyone who hears the signal ends up here." They walked in silence, boots crunching on frost. Elias clutched the folded coordinates in his pocket. The man introduced himself only as Conrad. "You used to work for SETI?" Elias asked. Conrad nodded once. "Now I work for what comes after." They reached the edge of the abandoned facility. The main structure was squat and square, built from prefab Soviet concrete blocks. A faded hammer and sickle still ghosted the entryway. Inside, dust coated every surface. Broken monitors. Empty bunk beds. Silence. But beneath it, something else. Conrad led him down a stairwell, deeper than the building should have allowed. At the lowest level, reinforced doors sealed a room where temperature was unnaturally cold. And inside, rows of machines still hummed. Ancient computers, vacuum tubes glowing faintly. Analog monitors cycling symbols, waveforms, and numbers. Power shouldn't exist. And yet, the room lived. It never turned off, Conrad whispered. Not since 1984. Elias approached the central console. The waveform on the screen, he recognized it instantly. The Hydra signal. "This is impossible. We thought it was Russian tech, at first," Conrad said. "But the patterns, they predate Earth's radio age." Elias's eyes narrowed. "You're saying this was already transmitting before humans discovered radio?" "Yes. We just didn't know how to listen." He ran a hand over the console. The cold wasn't mechanical, it was emotional, oppressive. Something in the signal pushed back. Like it didn't want to be heard. He plugged in his portable drive, running new analysis. A secondary frequency appeared, modulated over the first. Subharmonic, fractal in structure. Like a carrier wave for emotion. "Is this a mind interface?" Conrad nodded. "It's not speaking to our machines. It's speaking to us." The lights flickered. Elias blinked, and for a moment, he saw something. A figure, standing in the corner of the room, unmoving, watching. But when he turned, nothing was there. "You saw it too," Conrad said softly. "What is this place?" Conrad looked tired. "A mirror, maybe. Or a transmitter. But not ours." Suddenly, alarms wailed. Red lights spilled across the chamber. An automated voice repeated in Russian, "Biological breach, Sector 3. "What's in Sector 3? Elias asked, heart hammering. Conrad grabbed a flashlight and a keycard. No one's opened it since 1996. They ran down another stairwell, deeper still. The walls wept condensation. Static filled the air. At the end of the hall stood a vault-like door. Conrad swiped the card. The door hissed open. Inside was a room of mirrors. Not reflective surfaces, but polished panels angled like prisms. In the center, a cylindrical tank, empty but pulsing. Tubes hung like veins. The walls vibrated with silent pressure. Elias stepped forward. Every breath felt too loud. What was kept here? A receiver, Conrad whispered. Something they built to catch the other side. But it's gone. No, Conrad said, voice breaking. It moved. Elias turned to see the shadow again. Closer this time. In the mirrored wall behind him, the reflection wasn't his own. The lights exploded. Darkness swallowed everything. The darkness did not fade. Elias stood motionless in the pitch-black room. No sound, no hum, not even the buzz of static. The silence was alive. He felt it crawling beneath his skin, pressing in on the edges of his thoughts. A sudden breath beside him. It moved again, Conrad whispered. A faint green glow shimmered back to life. Emergency power. The mirrored panels no longer reflected properly. Their surfaces were distorted, as if warped by heat, or memory. Elias stepped toward one. His own reflection blinked a second too late. This place is reactive, he murmured. Conrad had moved to the control panel, flipping switches. Nothing responded. Power grids fried. Whatever it was, it didn't want us seeing that room. Or it wanted us to, Elias replied. And now it's inside. They climbed back up to the main level in silence. The cold above felt heavier. The machines had stopped. The waveform was gone. But inside Elias' mind, it pulsed, stronger than ever. Tell me the truth, Elias said, turning sharply to Conrad. What was this station really built for? Conrad hesitated. Originally, eavesdropping on the West. But by the late 80s, it changed. A signal was detected, same source as Hydra. Soviet scientists believed it was a conscious pattern. Something intelligent, buried in the radiation. And the receiver? They built it to listen directly into human minds. To create an interface, psychic, not electronic. Elias felt nausea rise. They were trying to weaponize it. Yes. Until people started breaking. He handed Elias an old file. Inside were scans, handwritten logs, drawings. The same waveform. People had dreamt it. Heard it. Some disappeared. Others went mad. They thought they were listening to the stars, Conrad whispered. But maybe they were listening to something, already inside us. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he felt pulled into the signal. In his dreams, he stood in a city made of glass, floating above a black sea. Voices whispered in a language he almost understood. When he awoke, his nose was bleeding. Conrad was gone. Elias searched every level of the station. The lower chamber was locked again. The mirrors reflected only concrete. He checked the outer perimeter, no footprints in the frost but his own. He returned to the control room. On the console was a worn notebook he hadn't noticed before. The pages were filled with equations, glyphs, and increasingly erratic handwriting. One phrase kept repeating. It is not speaking. It is remembering. Elias felt a cold pressure behind his eyes. Not pain, weight. As though his thoughts were being pulled through a funnel. In the mirror, his reflection stared back, but something was wrong. The timing. The pupils. Then it smiled. His knees buckled. He came to several hours later, sprawled on the cold floor. The signal was back, no longer just a sound, but a presence. Like a memory not his own. A scratchy radio in the corner crackled to life. "We see you now." The voice was his. But he hadn't spoken. The sky over the plateau had turned pale, as if light had forgotten how to shine. Elias stood outside the station, arms wrapped around himself, watching the horizon for signs of life, or threat. He had buried the notebook Conrad left. Something about it felt alive, twitching in his dreams like a parasite. Whatever this thing was, it wasn't just data. It was infection. The signal no longer came through machines. It was inside him now. He felt it humming in his molars, vibrating under his fingernails. He tried to suppress it, but the memories came anyway, of places he'd never been, and voices speaking in tones that made him weep without understanding why. He boarded a supply truck heading west. The driver didn't ask questions, didn't seem to notice Elias bleeding from one nostril. They passed an old radar array, half collapsed, wires waving in the wind like seaweed. "Used to listen for war," the driver muttered. "Now it listens to nothing." Elias stared at it long after it vanished from view. But it hadn't vanished. Not to him. That night, in a border town motel, he dreamt of the signal again, only this time, he was not receiving it. He was transmitting. When he awoke, the room stank of ozone. The mirror had cracked. He called Miriam Okafor. She answered after a long pause. "I'm being watched," she said before he spoke. "So am I. They know we've crossed the cognitive line. You've seen it too." "Yes. And Elias, it's not a message. It's a summons." A long silence. "I can't run anymore," she said. "There's a research facility in Kazakhstan. Off-grid. Underground. Go there." Elias hesitated. "What if I bring it with me?" "You already have. The moment you heard it." The call ended. 2 nights later, he arrived. The facility was buried under rock and permafrost, reachable only by a forgotten elevator shaft. Miriam waited by the lift, gaunt and pale. She hugged him without speaking. Below, the labs were dark. The walls were lined with lead. Not to keep signals out, but in. "We've been recording what happens after exposure," she explained. "Language decay. Cognitive drift. Identity collapse. It's not just mental. It's mimetic." Elias opened his mouth to respond but couldn't. He'd forgotten the word he meant to say. "Signal interference?" she asked softly. He nodded. They showed him a room where others sat quietly, engineers, linguists, doctors. All of them pale. All of them listening to something no one else could hear. In the center was a child. Maybe 9 years old. She looked up at Elias and whispered, "You're late." Elias knelt before the child. Her eyes didn't blink. Her voice had no echo. He reached out a hand, not knowing why. "I saw you in the mirror," she said. "You were already there." Miriam pulled him back. "Don't touch her. She hasn't moved in hours." But she spoke. She didn't. The others in the room slowly turned their heads. One by one. Perfect synchrony. "They're connected," Miriam said. "Or overridden." The lights flickered. Elias felt something unravel inside his mind, like a thread being pulled from the base of his skull. He grabbed the wall to steady himself. The hallway outside looked longer than it should have. As if perspective had bent. A siren blared, low, guttural, almost biological. "They've located us," Miriam said, eyes wide. "It's no longer just the signal. It's arrival." From above, something began pounding at the reinforced hatch. Not mechanical. Rhythmic. Like a knock that remembered how to wait. The knocking stopped. Elias pressed his ear against the steel door, but there was only silence. Not the silence of peace, but the silence that came when something waited. He turned back. Miriam was already leading the others down a sublevel, one not listed on any blueprint. The hallway narrowed, lights growing dimmer. Ahead, a chamber sealed by an older kind of lock. Manual. Analog. What is this place? Elias asked. Before we studied the signal, Miriam said, we tried to trap it. She turned the lock. The door groaned open. Inside, walls lined with copper, floors layered with concentric rings of lead, salt, iron. A Faraday tube. In the center, a chair. And in the chair, a man. Barely alive. Gaunt, skin clinging to bone. Eyes wide open, but unfocused. Electrodes on his head. Tubes in his arms. Machines that shouldn't work were still humming. Who is he? Elias whispered. He was the first, Miriam said. The first to hear it and survive. The man twitched. Elias stepped closer. Can he speak? Miriam nodded. But only in the signal. Elias leaned forward. The man's mouth moved, and the hum filled Elias' skull. Not sound, structure. Memories. Patterns. The man was transmitting, through brainwaves, not voice. He's not talking to us, Elias said slowly. He's talking to it. A sudden jolt of pain flared behind Elias' eyes. His vision fractured. Around him, the room twisted. The copper melted. The iron rang. He saw stars. But they were inside a body. Neurons like constellations. Synapses like galaxies. It wasn't space. It was mind. And the signal wasn't sent across the cosmos. It was born from inside, amplified through consciousness. Elias fell to the ground. Miriam screamed, but he couldn't hear her. Not with his ears. He was beyond the threshold. Time dissolved. He was in a black ocean again. The glass city. The voices. But now he understood the words. We were not the first. The child from before was there, floating above the water. You've made it, she said. Elias couldn't move. You are a carrier now. You will be the voice for what was silenced. What is it? Elias asked, not with lips, but thought. She turned. Behind her, a mass of eyes and echoes. A sentient wave of memory and regret. Older than stars. We are the memory of those who forgot themselves. Then Elias woke. He was back in the tomb. On the floor. Alone. Miriam, the team, the others, gone. No blood. No damage. Just absence. The man in the chair still sat. Elias rose, body trembling. He saw the mirror, cracked. The signal pulsing inside his veins. He walked out into the daylight. The snow had melted. The air buzzed. He knew what came next. The signal would spread, not through satellites, but stories. Dreams. Memory. Humanity wouldn't hear it. They would become it. Elias looked at the sky. It blinked. And then, it remembered him. By the time he boarded the train to Inner Mongolia, 2 men in gray suits had taken the seats behind him. He didn't need to turn around to know they weren't passengers.